Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have, yes, that's right, Tori, the Ryan Skeffington. Welcome.
I feel like the new kid in the classroom who everyone likes until they figure out if they're like their friend or not. So like, while all the attention's on me, I'll gladly accept it. Hopefully I can stay on everyone's good side for a little while longer.
You got the charm. I think you're good. All you need is the friendly nature, right? And it seems like
hmm
you got that. You got
I've
that down
found
pat.
that I fit in on BookTube because everyone's pretty nice, and so
Yeah.
there is no being fake nice because you don't want to be mean to anybody.
Well, and everyone's just looking for friendship, right?
hmm
We're looking for a place on the internet to be ourselves, talk about the things we love, and most of us don't have that tolerance for drama and
hmm
the all the things that go on the other side of the internet.
The
Gaming
drama
community.
is for the characters,
There
and
you
we
go.
can be mean to them as the writers.
You found a loophole. I like it.
Yeah.
We've got a few folks here with us. Bert, welcome. Evening, Tim. And yeah, so let's see here. We've got, I just want to start with actually congratulations on your debut
Thank
because
you.
I've got it up here. It looks gorgeous. You've got a stunning cover on there. Even the back is beautiful. So, congratulations. And can you just give us that elevator pitch that puts
Absolutely.
everyone on the spot?
So, Lost Souls is a space opera that is in an isolated setting set on a ring that follows a main character who is unfulfilled with his life. Everyone on the ring has an assigned role and an assigned duty to make sure that civilized society can continue. Um, he wants more from his life. And so he tries to explore the ring and advance humanity in a way that will fulfill his desires. Um, it delves into finding purpose in one's life, overcoming loss, and I don't want to go too far into the middle, and so I've dubbed the middle the shenanigans.
I
Um,
love it.
the shenanigans happen in the middle, and then you have a very climactic ending that it was supposed to originally be a standalone book. But I
Oh,
loved writing so much that I was like, how can I keep going? And so I added more screen times to some of the other point of views. And so that's why we end up with 7 point of views in a debut novel. Now, not everyone gets the same amount of attention, and there is a main character or a main uh, two characters, but it was a ton of fun diving into this brand new world to me.
I love that you put a number to the POVs because that was going to be one of my questions. That's quite ambitious because your world is large as well. You took off quite the chunk when you delved into this story. So in terms of it being a series, how many books can we expect? Is there a planned number?
So this storyline on this timeline will be a trilogy. I didn't want to go absolutely crazy with it because I wanted it to have a beginning and an end and say, this is a series for this stage of Ryan Skeffington. I wasn't, I'm not a great author. I'm not a great writer. What I've found going into the second book compared to the first book is I can draft more quickly. The draft is still
Mm,
just as bad, but I do it quicker. So I'm speeding up the cycle of feedback and um, the process. And
right.
so we'll have a complete story, hopefully ending in 3 books.
Okay, so more to look forward to. And so, what kind of reader would enjoy this?
Hmm. So when I was learning about writing, I listened to Brandon Sanderson like
Mm,
most everyone does, and he talked about how a story can have a setting, plot, and characters. A story can survive with good characters,
mm,
or if it has a bad setting, it can survive if you have good characters.
right.
If you have a really cool world but you have stick figures going through that world, it's not going to be interesting. So I put a lot of effort into the characters, hence why
Right.
there's 7 POVs. Um, so if you like multi-location stories with hopefully well-developed characters, there are very adult, mature themes.
Mm,
Um, Space gladiators. So there's some fun involved, but there are some very hard hitting emotional moments. And so it is a very up and down book that hopefully is pretty quick to read. It's 100,000 words, so not a
mm,
chunker. I think I formatted it to where I put way too many words on a page, so it only came out to 250 pages. So
mm.
not a long read, but a heavy hitter.
And I wanted to ask too, so would you say that someone interested in psychological exploration of characters and human ethics would also enjoy this? Because I started it, and I
Mhm.
would say that you are delving into some topics of how should we treat people in a caste society, right? And that kind of delves deeper into, I'm not sure how far it's gonna delve into it
Mhm.
throughout the book, but I would love to know if that's an aspect readers can, look forward to.
Well, I don't think I did it on purpose. I would say yes, because one of the things that I learned when I was writing is you want to describe the world how the character would describe them. And so,
Mm,
like you mentioned, there's a 3.5 tiered system, three main castes with a ruling class. And so each caste or class will describe the world differently. They'll interact with people differently. And so treating a caste system both up and down is, I guess, addressed based on how the characters behave. So
mm,
I tried not to put my own personal opinion in it. I tried to remove myself as much as possible, but I failed miserably in some attempts. But yes, when you are with the lowest caste character, you're going to see some disdain and
mm,
distrust of the ruling elites. And then when you have the high caste character who's been demoted, who wants to
mm.
get back to the high caste system, will he actually make friends with the low caste people that he meets? Or will he use them for his advantage? Or will there be a whole lot more complexity and shenanigans in the middle?
I love shenanigans because I
It's
do
such a
this
good
with
word.
reviews too. I'm like, "This is what the story's about," and shenanigans ensue.
I I found that for books, I really don't mind spoilers too much, but I
Mm,
hate spoilers for movies, and so I want to provide the same care to people who don't like spoilers for books. Um, I just read Golden Sun, which is the second
mm.
book in the Red Rising series, and I'm starting Morning Star here soon.
Oh,
And
nice.
I got spoiled on the very last scene of Golden Sun, which is a huge scene. And as I'm
Mhm.
listening to it, I'm so immersed in the story that I forgot I already knew what happened. And so
Okay.
it didn't affect me at all. And so I was very, very thankful that I was so immersed in it, I didn't recognize
Mm.
what was coming. But I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who um, hates spoilers as much as I do.
Yeah, and I know that there's, I think so long as you say, "Hey, spoiler incoming,"
Hmm.
let's knock off now and then come back in 5 minutes. That's probably okay, but I completely get it. You don't wanna ruin the, experience for anyone.
Hmm.
We have NJ here, Brighton, hello, Derek, hello.
So great to see everybody. Thank you
Look,
all for coming out. I really appreciate you spending your time with us this evening.
why are you not hosting? You're doing such a fantastic job.
So I've probably said this a handful of times on the couple interviews I've done is I used to stream on Twitch.
Oh,
And
nice.
so you get really used to talking to nobody because when you are a Twitch streamer with zero live viewers,
Oh,
they don't go and watch your VODs like they do on YouTube. You go to Twitch to watch live content. And so you get maybe 5 or 10 seconds if someone pops into your stream. If you're just sitting
yeah.
there playing your game, saying nothing. They're like, okay, this is not my stream. But if you're there and you're engaged, and a Briton has a great way to describe it. He says, I ramble well. Um, and so that's a learned skill set, to not
Absolutely.
have dead air.
Oh, I love it. I just learned something. Thank you.
It's
And
tough.
it is, it's a learning curve. Live streams took me about a year
Mhm.
before I got more comfortable with them, but, Derek here is currently opening a package with your book in it.
So Derek won the Page Turners giveaway.
Ooh,
He was one of the two winners, and so he is one of three people who was sent the Lost Souls book plate. These are
very nice.
brand new, and I have Bert in the chat to thank for this. He was like, "Hey, can I get a book plate?" And I asked Bert, "What's a book plate?" And so now they exist.
That's amazing. As someone international, I know that's huge because there's quite a few books where I can't get signed copies, and that would just be perfect.
Mhm.
We've
Um,
Yeah,
Go
we've got Matt with us here too from the Beard of Darkness. He's wondering who you are.
He is the man who gave me my start. I think he was my very first interview, and so if I'm anywhere and everywhere, it's because of him.
He's amazing. Absolutely. I don't know how you get as many interviews as you do, Matt, but you do a phenomenal job.
And he's not follically challenged. His is just vertically pulled by gravity a little bit harder than mine is.
Oh, I see. That's how the rules work. I like
Mhm, mhm.
that. We have Bo here as well. Good evening, John.
Evening, Bo.
Welcome. And Tori, good on you. I hope you enjoy it. She's just downloaded the ebook.
Oh, thank you so much, Tori.
Join
Uh,
me. Join me. I'm currently reading it.
I just fixed a typo yesterday, and then I was told about another typo from um, a certain somebody. Nope, this way, about half an hour ago. So I'll get that one fixed here soon.
No.
But she did ask a question in the chat that is one
Oh,
of my favorite things to talk
me.
about.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that a gladiator mask behind you? So it's not technically a mask; it's a helmet. And it is stainless steel. And I cut out the foam from a softball helmet so that I could wear it. So it is a fully functional gladiator's helmet from the movie Gladiator, circa 2000, Russell Crowe.
Which also leads us into one of the questions, which is your inspirations
Hmm.
for this book, because you've talked about it before with, Mike Molman on Bald and Balding,
Hmm.
and, I know you mentioned Gladiator, X-Men, and there was one other one, Dune, was
Hmm.
some of the ones that you had talked about as your inspirations, but you also sent me a very helpful cheat sheet, by the way, thank you.
I'm glad it was helpful. I was typing it up and I was like, I hope people use this.
Oh, absolutely. I always go to About Me's and stuff like that, so it was a huge help, but you also took inspiration from Atlantis: The Lost
Hmm.
Empire, one of my favorite movies,
Hmm.
Arcane, Halo, Cyberpunk, to name a few. Can you talk a little bit about your inspirations and how you combine so many different forms of inspiration into this?
Absolutely. So, because you brought up Atlantis in your message, I took a trip down memory lane and I revisited the nostalgia and kind of re-looked into it and looked at the artistry and whatnot. And Atlantis is a ragtag group of individuals going on an adventure, to a lost civilization, and it just you feel like you're a part of the crew when you go on that adventure. But the one thing that I loved most about Atlantis, which I think subconsciously was an inspiration, I didn't notice it until after. I have floating motorcycles and floating cars and floating subways in this world, and the motorcycles have like elements of flying fish, so they're like naturally shaped, and the main form of transportation in Atlantis is like a fish shaped motorcycle that's powered by the crystals of the Atlanteans. And so you combine the magical metal that I introduced in the first chapter with this organic motorcycle shape, and you have a one for one carbon copy sci fi version of I think they're called Kedex, maybe pronouncing that wrong, from Atlantis. And so I've always loved story. I just didn't know that I loved writing.
Mm,
And so I think I pulled from all the stories I loved throughout my entire life. I always got accused of being a little bit of an exaggerator when I read told stories. Um, combine a bad memory and a propensity to overindulge, and stories
mm.
suddenly become fishing stories, if you know that reference.
Yes,
Okay,
I do.
so every story became a fishing story, um, and I would always love listening and telling stories vocally, as
Mm,
humans love to do. And I was a technical writer for a little bit. I would write articles that were more professional,
mm,
more business development, personal growth. And I've really enjoyed crafting a narrative, creating a plan. I'm going to introduce you to this concept. It's going to be brand new to you. I'm going to tell you about all the important things. I'm going to wrap everything up nicely to really stick it in your mind, and hopefully you go away learning something. Talking about fiction is the same thing.
mm.
You take a premise, something you want to tell the audience, or just a story that you want to tell, create a beginning, middle, and end. And then I think the inspirations are what make the story fun. You
Mm.
take the best of everything that you loved and try and put it in your story so that maybe other people will love it just as much as you do.
I love it. I love it. And so I do want to talk a little bit about your choice of writing a book because,
Mhm.
like you said, you love stories, and writing was something that was more a professional nature for you at the time. What was it that led you to do a written story as opposed to a
Mhm.
different format?
Audacity. Uh, I did not grow up in a creative household, um, and so we were all sports all the time, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tonight's
I had to put it up there, Miss
that
Packard.
was that the intro to the VHS. That's funny. That is awesome. And oh, I lost my train of thought. Okay,
Sorry.
we're getting it back. We're getting it back. Oh, I played baseball my whole life, and so did my younger brother. And so Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays were devoted to travel baseball. Anytime we weren't playing baseball, he and I were playing video games. And so writing just wasn't something that was a part of my life. And so me and my wife were on a really long drive home after a football game. It was 13 hours from Nashville to Oklahoma City. And I came up with this idea for this world. And one of the inspirations being X-Men, I asked myself the question, what would happen if the government had Magneto's like metal controlling powers? And I was like, that would be terrifying. And I was like, I wonder if there's a book about that. And me being a completely lazy human being, instead of looking it up, I said, I should write one because that's the less effort option. And so I just I just chewed on this world and pulled everything that I loved from my childhood and said, huh, there's something to this. And 2 days later, I opened a Google Doc and just started typing.
I absolutely love that that was the scene that sparked it because I remember watching that for the first time and having the "Oh, snap" moment,
Uh-huh.
right? That was terrifying. So to know that that was the moment that went, "Hmm, what can I turn that into?" And
Mhm.
it's dark. You do go dark.
Yes, there is the ups and downs of humanity.
Mm.
Um, I was talking with a friend recently, and we were just chit-chatting, and I don't know where it came from, but the human element of suffering came out of my mouth, and I was like, "That's a damn good chapter title." Um, but in the first book, there's a lot of, like, happy moments and success
Mm.
and cheers and family bonds because that's super important to me. And then there is the you are down in the dumps, you are feeling worthless, and how do you pick yourself up after that? And hopefully people will read that. And if they're
Mm.
ever at that point, know that you can get back up. I think that is the one takeaway that I would like to tell people from an author to a reader is that you can get back up.
That is so important. It's nice to see when authors are willing to mix those 2 different, perspectives, right? It's dark, but it has a bit of a slice of hope,
Hmm.
right? You want the readers not to walk away a complete, depressed mess from just a pure dystopian future.
Yeah.
It's nice to see the slice of hope in there. And, NJ says baseball and video games. I think we just became best friends.
And you can be my friend every day of the week.
And we have Brian here as well, and SA. Thank you so much for showing up,
For
joining
everyone
us.
who popped in, I'm so sorry I can't get to the comments. I used to be really good at getting to comments and talking. Now that skill has completely eluded me. So thanks everyone for coming to hang out tonight. Go ahead and type at Ryan if you want me to see your question, and that'll let me know to key in on your comment because I want to get to them.
And I'll be watching the chat and highlighting them as well, so not all on you.
Okay,
We'll
perfect.
teamwork this.
I like it.
So music.
Hmm.
Music is another, inspiration for you with your writing, but first and foremost, the songs that you listen to that helped inspire you with this, is it available somewhere on a, playlist that readers can listen to?
So I don't have a curated playlist, but there are three
Okay.
that are like go-tos. The first, which is actually I'm going to tell on myself here a little bit and tell a little bit of a story. Um, this beautiful vinyl display was hung after sitting on this little media center. I think maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks. It was hung because I had an interview with Beard of Darkness, and I wanted this to be a part of the background because everyone has really cool backgrounds, and mine is a wall. So I hung those pictures and hung
It's
those vinyls.
gorgeous.
um, but this album right here is called Deep Blue by Parkway Drive. And
Okay,
it is an album that tells a story.
great.
From song 1 to song 13, you follow an individual through the lyrics, and he has a proper character arc like a novel would. And I just, because I was brand new to writing and had no idea what plot structure was and loved that album so much, I was like,
Mm,
okay, there's the plot structure. And so each chapter title is the song track list. So
right.
there's some love for that album. The second one is I guess all of Dayseeker. They're a band,
Okay.
um, and they are, oh man, how do I describe them? Sad boy screamy is probably how I best would describe them. Their singer has a beautiful voice, but they have some very emotionally charged songs,
Mm,
kind of like some chapters in this book. And so it was like mood listening while I was processing my own feelings. And then third would be a new artist that I found, Antent, Antent, and it's ambient synthwave,
ooh,
chill, very calm, almost spa music,
yep.
and it is just relaxing. It lowers my shoulders and melts the knots out of my back,
Mhm,
and it just makes writing easy because there's no
mm.
distractions, there's no high or low energy. It's just there to let the words flow out. So those are the three main ones that I just repeatedly listen to.
Oh, wow.
Um, so hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer.
Oh, no, that's great. I always say when people feel like they're rambling, you're absolutely not. That's just your passion showing.
Mhm.
And let that shine. Josh here says Ryan's taste in music is top tier, and it certainly sounds like it.
It matches his, so he's just patting himself on the back.
I love the relaxing synthwave. I'm gonna have
Mhm,
to look that up in the story. I am the type of person to listen to lo-fi in the
mhm,
background while I'm working on stuff
yep,
because I know people say, "Oh, play classical music if you just need background noise."
Mhm.
Well, I play classical music on violin, so for me, I end up focusing on the music and, "Oh,
Mm.
okay, how are they breaking that down? What's their bow structure like?" Or, you know, I'm analyzing it as though I'm playing it, so it's more distraction.
I listened to, Tori's chat yesterday, with
Mm,
Beard of Darkness, and she talked about how she listens to music in other languages because she'll casually sometimes just type the lyrics of a song if she listens to it in English, and so
right.
you know the language of strings, and so you're listening and you're understanding what the language is.
That's
So,
probably
that
it
could
'cause
be it.
my teacher often likes to remind me that music is its own language. You
Mhm.
have to understand how it works in order to, get the most out of it if you're going to play it, so that makes sense. Thank you for that tidbit.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we talked about, like, it's its own language that you hear, but I think
Mm,
it's also another thing that you feel.
yes.
I listen to metal music, and half the time, I don't know what they're saying, like, unless I go look up the
Mm,
lyrics, I don't know, but it makes me feel a certain way, and so
mhm,
it's like a strong handshake or a soft hug at the end of the day, depending on what you're listening to. It is super powerful, and it gets people talking. I found
mm.
it's one of, like, the great conversation starters, as I've proven here with my ramblings. When I meet someone new, I'm like, "Tell me about your top 3 favorite music styles and genres and why
Mm,
they're important to you." And everyone has a story to go with their favorite type of music.
absolutely. It's, oftentimes, in science anyway, they say math is the universal language,
Mhm,
right? For me, it's the same with music.
mhm.
It's a music is something that anyone can understand regardless of language barrier in terms of that emotional level. It evokes something in listeners. So yes, absolutely.
You're just bilingual,
There
unless you're bad
there
at math.
I'm bad at English too, so and we have Chris with us here. Hello, thanks
Howdy,
for
Chris.
joining us. So, in terms of music, then, are there any other artists, albums that you would recommend for people to pick up?
Hmm. I'm gonna try and reach deep. Ah, The Midnight.
Okay.
They are an 80s synthwave group that has some songs that have no vocals and some songs that have the male lead singer. They bring in guests. They are lovely. I just saw them in
Mm.
concert a month and a half ago,
Oh,
and
wow.
it was spectacular. It was a very small theater that they converted into a concert venue, and so all of the acoustics were perfect.
Mm.
So I very much recommend the Midnight. Let's see what else we got up there. Um, for my rap lovers, J. Cole. Love J.
Okay.
Cole. For people who like lyrics and stories, he is top tier. I listen to him when I work out and just like listen to the way that he uses words. Um,
Mm.
spectacular. And so country, Luke Combs.
Okay.
This man has butter for a voice. It's
Mm.
smooth and raspy at the same time. I don't know how it's possible.
Ooh.
Um, but I think that covers most of the genres. They're all phenomenal in their own way.
That's fantastic, thank you, and yes, I will be writing all these down and looking them up too. And, we'll do a check-in with the live chat. Folks, if you have a question for Ryan, pop it in the live chat, and we will get to those. In the meantime, let's dive back into your writing a bit. I would love to know because this is your debut and you're working on a trilogy. What have you learned about yourself as a writer since your first draft?
Um, I'll go 2 things. The first is one that I literally just thought of. I'm extremely sensitive.
Okay.
I got a 3-star review, and it crushed me.
Oh,
And,
3
it's
is good though.
yeah, well, you weren't raised in the household that I was raised in. Um, so the person actually recommends the book, and
Mm,
they say it's good and whatnot, and I'm like, "Well, I didn't blow your socks off, so that wasn't a 98 out of 100. It wasn't an A plus, so I can do better next time. I grew up a 90s kid. That was the thing. And I had a lot of friends who were very competitive with grades.
Mm,
So I think that's where I get it from. Um, However, on the same flip side of that coin is when I get a good review, like it makes my day.
absolutely.
I love it. And so I found that putting my art out into the world makes me feel emotions I didn't know I was capable of.
Mm,
It is a wonderful experience, more positive than negative, but something that I learned.
mm,
And then the second, technically, is I am not creative in a rigid environment. Um,
mm.
However, I have to write the book in a rigid environment or else it doesn't get written. And so I have to give myself permission to daydream and just pull ideas out of the ether as they happen. And that's why I think there's so many inspirations in the book
Mm,
is I'll watch a movie and I'll say, "Oh, that one character element is super cool and I really like that. And it would fit really well with character number 7 because they
mm.
share similar backstories." And so I have a Google Doc. Each book gets a plan Google Doc and a draft Google Doc. The plan is about half the length of the actual draft. So each
Wow.
plan is about 50,000 words. They're not all used, they're not all coherent, but it's just, hey, I pulled this from over here. Hey, I pulled this from over here. Throw that all down and just, you've got ingredients in front of you. What fits to make something taste good? Uh,
Do you find that process just helps you with, putting it all together, with working out the good versus what's not gonna work? Is it just a form of keeping everything organized? What's the, because that's a lot. That's a
mm,
lot to put on yourself. What's the aspect that helps you the most with going through that process?
I think it allows me to not force myself to write. Um, if I sit down at the computer and I don't have anything in the plan, I'm not going to
Mm,
sit here for 2 hours and just bang my head against the keyboard and say, "Think, brain, think. You've got to be smart right now. You're a writer, you're an academic." And I just go and play video games. It's okay because writing is something that's fun.
mm.
I have a horrible habit of monetizing my hobbies and then never doing them again. And I don't want to do that with this. And
No, we
so
need more books.
the expectation is crushing me. No, I'm kidding. Aaron said the same thing. He was like, I read this bibliotheory. And he was like, I want more. When's the
Yeah.
next one? And I was like, well, I love, 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 love that you're saying that, but I don't want to make something bad
Mm,
and it be rushed. I'm not going to Patrick Rothfuss
no.
everybody, but I do sit with my ideas. And the more you procrastinate and marinate with something,
Mm,
I think the better it gets. And so with this one, I outline every scene about
mm,
half a page. Characters, motivations, goals, where the setting is, what they're going to do. If I listen to a piece of dialogue and I'm like, that's sick dialogue, I put it in
mm,
one of the scenes and I might not use it word for word, but it kind of inspires the dialogue. And so that's like draft 0 is the outline. And then draft 1, where I put 100,000 words into a Google Doc, is me taking the clay that a sculptor would and just smashing it down onto your turnstile. It
okay.
it it is clay. It's
Yeah.
there. It's not good. It's not shaped like anything. But once you start to work it a little bit and you edit it and you refine it, you can say, "Huh, I've got too much clay. I don't have enough clay. Maybe clay is not the right material for this. Maybe I need to make this out of marble."
Mm,
Um, and so when you get to sit with it, it allows your brain to find the parts that you love and keep those. And you say, hey, this is really good. And this is part of the story that I want to tell. And so when someone gives me feedback, you're not going to let them touch that part. However, the rest of it's fair game. If you're not in love with it and it's meh, let someone tell you, hey, this isn't great. And you're like, I know, I'm trying to work on it. Do you have any ideas? And so you get that give and take, which is another thing that I learned during the writing process is how, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? How much camaraderie there is
Mhm.
in writing. Writing is extremely lonely and isolationist, and that's why I love it. I'm a social introvert, so this is how I recharge. But at the same time, developing your craft and building a good story and adjusting the art that you have is
Mhm.
very much a game of teamwork, as much as you'll let it be. And I love that so much about writing.
Oh, I love that because I have heard that from, other authors as well, where they have their writing group or they have their buddy that they sit down and they bounce ideas back and forth, or even just a partner,
Mhm.
right? "Hey, partner, read this and give me some feedback." It sounds like you have a very solid system for you and, your writing process, which is it's great to see because writing absolutely it just scares me, I guess, is the
It's
best it's
daunting.
daunting. It's it's daunting, so to see people just pick it up and find the things that work for them, not give up, put their book out there, and then keep going is so admirable. So, kudos for going through that, finding
If
what works for you, and
if
then
I can write a book, anyone can write a book. Um,
well, and
it's
sharing it,
yeah,
right?
that's the
Sharing the
tough part.
process.
Well, Amazon makes publishing it super easy. It can be done in like 15 minutes, but like
Mhm.
building the courage, yeah, that takes probably more than 15 minutes. But yeah, it's one of those things that if you want to and it makes you happy,
Mhm.
and no one's ever given you permission to do this, I give you permission. I needed that when I was getting my master's. I needed permission to step out and be creative. And so
Mhm.
if you need that, I'm giving it to you. And if you need help, message me. We'll make it happen.
That's amazing. That's, the the type of, positivity, support, and just encouragement that I love seeing in the community. So, thank you. And, let's dive into your prologue. Now, I believe your prologue wasn't always planned to be the hook that it currently is. Can you talk about, the differences in the prologue and how you had planned it versus the dark, gut-wrenching opening that we get now?
Absolutely. I have found another thing that I've learned about myself is the very last scene that I put in my book is typically the best,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
because I become a better writer throughout the whole process.
Right.
And I just got some beta feedback on book two, and they said this scene is the absolute best. Now it's in the middle of the book, but it was the last scene that I wrote. So there's a tradition of the last scene that I write being the best. And so the prologue that exists in the book, and if JCM Byrne was here, he would we would sing his praises for prologues. Um,
Yes.
it's technically a prologue, but it doesn't say prologue. It's just the first scene in chapter one, and you get
Right.
away with that doing multi POV stories.
This is
Um,
true.
it's just very far in the past. So I originally, because I was a bad writer and didn't know what I was doing, narrated from a third person omniscient point of view what happened to the earth, how humanity stepped out into the stars. And I think one of my favorite lines that got thrown away, I was like, humanity stepped out onto the cosmic playing field and summarily rolled their ankle. Um,
Bit of this is
and I
probably
just
not intentional comedic, but
Well, I
I
just I
love
wanted to
it.
say, "Hey, we're so awesome that we're stepping out," and massive failure from the beginning. Um,
Please put that in the book somewhere.
maybe I'll put that in a history text.
That would be great.
I'll put that in one of the epilogues. Um, and so I had a 6,000 word third person omniscient narrated POV of how humans got from Earth to the solar system that the story takes place in. And then I
Mm,
started the story with Maximus, um, beginning his journey. And everyone who first read it was like, this is trash. And I was like, I see, I kind of knew that, but you didn't have to say it so brutally. Um, and just learning feedback and getting some criticism and
Right.
whatnot. And they said, hey, make the scene from a character's point of view. The reader wants to connect with somebody. And I was
Mm.
like, cool, I can do
Yeah.
that. Who's old? And in the main storyline, there's like one character who's over the age of 40. And so I used him as the POV character of the very first scene because we got 65 years of separation from the first scene to when the main storyline starts.
Mm. So, okay. 'Cause okay. For my own reading, personal
Mhm.
reading, I'm now gonna keep a closer eye.
You're very close. If you haven't already, you'll see Peter again soon.
Okay, okay, good to know. Because I was looking, I was like, "Wait a minute, there's so many people." Like, "Are we coming back to this guy?"
I see, you see Peter again, but you don't get his POV again.
Okay,
He was
interesting.
strictly a tool to introduce the world, but he is a very important character in the
Mm,
formation of another POV. So you'll see him again in book 1
okay,
and in book 2. I'm plotting book 3 right now, and he will be in there slightly.
okay,
Um, it will be a very important moment, but won't be as prominent.
okay, interesting, noted for later, and, hello, hello, thank you for joining us,
Adi
good to see
Usman,
you. Yes,
did I believe if I'm remembering this correctly, he just did his first live interview with Carl, author of Renya, yesterday or
yes,
the day before.
Carl Forscher.
Um, yeah, and it was lovely. I very much
Oh,
enjoyed it.
fantastic. I'm gonna have to go check that out.
Another lover of metal music. His is far more wide and expansive a knowledge that I have. So if anyone ever needs music recommendations, I point you to Usman.
Yes, alright, good to know. I'm, I didn't always listen to metal, but I've been more inclined to, I guess YouTubers is the best way to describe it, for, that genre where they do metal covers,
Mm,
and I've
mhm.
really been loving that.
You would love Pop Goes Punk.
Okay, I'm
And so
gonna
they take your favorite like top 40 radio songs,
oh,
Kelly Clarkson, Taylor Swift, and these metal bands make like pop punk cover songs. Um,
okay.
and so it's a very training wheels introduction into the genre because you know the song, you know everything that's coming, but it's in a different style.
Right. Okay, good to know, and, I'm not sure, Bert.
I think it's
Uh,
the blanket and the cardigan and the very nice demeanor.
knitting
Um,
in my spare time.
yeah.
I'm gonna be the old granny knitting to metal.
Oh, that's gonna be fantastic.
Uh, so, talking about your POVs, you've got 7. Could you
Mhm,
give us a bit of a short intro to the characters? I know there's quite a few, but if you wanna
mhm.
pick out certain ones in particular, by all means, but
Yep.
I'd love a little intro for readers.
Maximus is the main POV. He is the single character that I started with, and he was 70% of the story
Mm,
on first draft. And then I realized I wanted to do this again. And so I expanded the world a little bit more. Um, he is the individual who is the catalyst of change. He exists to show you what the high caste system is like because he was a part of multiple of the high caste systems and has gone through change in his life.
mm,
Um, Kana is the second most important POV. She is a dredge mechanic, and a dredge is the lowest caste in the world. And those are your two characters on the cover, Maximus on the right and Kana on the left. Um, Pentalux is Maximus's father. Um, one of the, I guess, leading scientists in all of the quote unquote magic system of this world. So the
mm,
magic system in a sci-fi is just advanced technology. And so Pentalux is the catalyst for all of the magic system in this. And this is where the father-son relationship comes from, and hopefully why people connect to those characters. Eric's is probably my favorite POV. You meet him in chapter 5. Um, he is the gruff old man who is a Titan, which in this world is your Power Ranger space gladiator. Um,
Please
he
put that on the back of the book. I love it.
he has a wonderful relationship with Kana, but theirs is very complex. And you don't get a whole lot of that like said to you specifically, but if you kind of read between the lines of how they treat each other, where they exist in this world, and you can kind of make some inferences and understand why their relationship is taboo, but also powerful because of it. Um, I very much enjoy their relationship. Those are probably the main 4 POVs that'll
Mm,
get you going. There are some others that are more side characters that kind of are there to do world building from
mm,
characters that just reoccur. So, like, if you watched or read Lord of the Rings from Frodo's point of view, but you got like one scene with Legolas, with him doing elvish things to just learn about the elven world,
right.
it would be a little bit out of place. But if it looped back into the main storyline, you're like, oh, that's why this is cool, and yada yada yada. They all mesh together at the end.
Right. And so to that point, this is all intersecting POVs.
Hmm.
So with how detailed you went in your outlining, uh, did you go into such depth to plan that out to make sure that all the plot lines and everything worked smoothly with one another? What was your process like for that?
Yes, Game of Thrones is huge in our
Mm,
household, and my wife absolutely goes hard on some Game of Thrones lore. We have all of the books, all of
um,
the visual novel retellings of the history and whatnot, and so George was like my compass for multi POV, and he is
right.
excellent at it. And so I wanted to write something that was technically sound from a plot point of view, because plot holes are annoying.
Mhm.
Um, and like I mentioned earlier, perfection is kind of the bar for where I set myself. And every POV has its own storyline. They're their own main
Right.
characters of their own life. And so when you start at time 0, you say these characters are all acting on their own in their own world. And then when you bring them together, that's when they have a interacting scene. That scene then affects those characters and they now behave differently. So when they separate, you now have them on that same timeline, but they're behaving differently, living their own story. And that's kind of how I plotted it, so that there weren't plot holes and it all cohesively made sense.
Mm.
Um, there's a scene where I introduce these guys on the back. These guys are called
Oh.
Leviathan. Um, they're very fun. But there's a scene where all of the characters see them from different points of view and they'll have different reactions because they're
Mm.
their own characters, they're their own different people, they're where they're at in the world. And so you get to see how different POVs would react to the same situation.
I like that. I was wondering if we were gonna meet those. So that's great. And it sounds like, well, I don't want to assume, I'll just ask. When you're going through it in that way to make sure that there's no plot holes and the characters are all reacting from their points in the world, in terms of developing your characters from the ground up, you talked
Mhm.
about pulling some aspects that you liked of other characters. Did you combine those aspects to get the characters? Did you sit down and have an imaginary conversation with them? How did you figure out who these characters needed to be in order for the story to be so thorough and just reach the end?
Reaching the end's the hardest part,
Yes.
but it is possible. Um, I listen to a lot of I'm gonna tell on myself again, like bro podcasts, like wisdom and how to be like alpha male. And I'm just like, some of the things that they say are really stupid, but then some of them are like actual successful businessmen and can kind of say something smart.
Right.
And one snippet of a 3 hour podcast that I took that I still remember is, what would you put a person through for them to have the characteristics that you desire? And
Oh.
so if you want someone who's patient, you wouldn't give them everything right away.
Mm,
If you wanted someone who was resilient, you wouldn't give them an easy life. And I'm like, ah, that's cool. I'm going to use that for world building. And so Eric's is a Titan. He's the number one ranked Titan. He is a gladiator, he's a killer.
mm.
His nickname is the God of Death. And if I wanted a character to be like that, what would I have to put him through for him to get those monikers? And so instead of like s- building a character as they are right now, I build their history. So
Right.
from age 15, would he have an abusive father who put him through military training, who had to kill by the age of 19, fell in love and had a kid at 22, but that daughter was taken away. So he's bitter and angry. And his wife, because they're in different castes, can't be with him. And none of this is in the book. This is
I was
all
gonna
his
ask that.
background lore. Um, you get like that much of what I just rambled on in like a dream sequence. But all of that is like made up history to make him the 45-year-old man that he is. And
So
so I do that for every character.
that's fascinating. Are you ever gonna do a maybe like a companion to the series where you go into and you share all of those details that are kind of hidden in the notes in the background, but not necessarily in the story?
Because Ryan Cahill is the celebrity of indie booktube, I have seen a lot of him and I listen to a lot of
Yeah.
podcasts and whatnot. He is a wonderful human being. He is
Mm,
hilarious. He proposes novellas as God's gift to indie booktube.
yes.
Um, Now, I might be exaggerating, like I mentioned earlier, but I would love to do a Hyperion esque novel
Mm.
system for my Seven Titans. And
Oh.
so, Hyperion, for anyone who doesn't know, has multiple pilgrims, multiple stories that teach you about this world in isolated, unique stories. And each Titan comes into the rank of Titan at their own unique time, their own unique
Mm.
perspective, their own unique circumstance. And all of the characters that you're learning about in this trilogy will exist in those novellas.
Oh, I love that, and I don't think I'm alone here. Josh agrees. Yeah, that background lore stuff is always intriguing. The glacier of an author versus reader knowledge. A companion would be awesome, and by the time the delay gets done, I'm sure Josh will agree on the novellas. That's fantastic.
And I put a poll out and I was like, what do I work on next? Book three or a novella? Because novella fever was everywhere on BookTube.
Yeah.
And book three won out, which I'm very thankful for because that's kind of what I
Mm.
was rooting for. Um, but I really want to write Eric's novella. It's the only one that I've plotted out. That's why I was able to ramble so quickly on what
Right.
happened in his life. And it is just, he's one of my favorite characters. And so I want to be able to give him more screen time. Um, and after that, I'm going to do something Cosmere-esque where
Oh.
it's the same world, but completely separated from these people that you know. Um, However, this technically a book two spoiler, but not really. It'll be a year away, so everyone will forget. The concept of immortality
Mm.
is brought into the fold, all Altered Carbon, if anyone's ever seen that.
Okay.
And so that allows interesting storytelling mechanics, like being able to hide information from readers because you
Mm.
don't know the soul that's in the body of the POV.
Oh. Oh. Okay.
So I plan on playing some
Hmm.
really fun tricks and like I want some gotchas and some M. Night Shyamalan twists in there, but
You're
that's 3, 4 years away.
you're turning into, the author who cannot be trusted. That's that's the title you've now been awarded.
I'll never lie to you. I just won't tell you the truth.
That see?
Everything in book one is honest. No one lies. I promise.
Okay. Alright, I'm now suspicious of everything. We're gonna we're gonna pivot here because Derek has a question for you. What kind of games did you use to play on Twitch?
So in college, I was nearly a professional StarCraft player. And that's a real time strategy game where you and your opponent have a base with some resources and you build an army, and everything that you do happens in real time instead of I take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn. There's no thinking about it. If the enemy is attacking, he's attacking right now. And I had tons of fun with it. And then I started to stream that on Twitch, and it was a dying game. And so no one watched.
Mm,
And I was like, well, this is kind of boring and lonely. So let's switch it up to what the kids like these days.
Among
And so I
Us?
started playing Fortnite.
Okay. I was close.
And so I started playing Fortnite and Warzone, which is the Call of Duty equivalent of
Right.
Fortnite Battle Royale. And I played those for about 2 years with some single player games intermixed.
Oh, wow.
I did a Portal and Portal 2 1 day stream for each of those where I beat the game in a single session.
Oh my gosh.
So those were a lot of fun. And Fortnite was just the perfect game to stream and play
Mm,
because, like the camaraderie you have with writing partners and writing groups, you would pair up with other streamers and you would play together and you would
mm,
interact with their chats. And so I made a lot of really good friendships there. And just life went a different direction for me. Like I loved it, but I didn't want to turn it into a job. I wasn't going to make any money from it. Um, and so I was like, hey, I'm still going to be playing games. That's just what I do. I played League of Legends and never streamed it, but I got to step away from an activity that takes me away from my wife for three
mm.
hours a night, 4 days a week. I was like,
Yeah.
this just it's not sustainable. Thank you everyone for coming and hanging out. I loved all of you massively, and we did like a send off when I like had to go back to real life and get a job, and I had like 75 people hanging out. So
Oh,
that
that's
was it
amazing.
was awesome.
That's really sweet. And so are you still playing games in your own personal time? If so, what games would you recommend?
So I play more turn-based games that are more chill that like I can just walk away from and it's no big deal. Hearthstone is the big one.
Oh,
It's a
yes.
card game based on the Blizzard IP, World of Warcraft,
Mhm.
and that has taken up a decade of my life, and I absolutely love it. But it's so casual. I play it for 15 minutes and then I leave. And then League of Legends, which is the game that Arcane is based off of, has a mini game inside of the game called Teamfight Tactics. It's just a turn-based
Okay.
battle simulator. You have like 5 or so characters with traits and whatnot, and you battle the
Mm.
other characters. And it's something really fun to do while you're watching YouTube or scrolling Discord or Reddit or whatnot. Um, but I don't game as hardcore as much as I used to. The
That's
kids, they're just too good.
yeah, that's also it. Josh here says Warzone did that to me. COVID times made so much better by games with mates. Yeah.
Yes. And I found that gaming in your mid to late 20s is just kind of lonely if you don't have friends to play with. You're
Yeah.
just, it just doesn't hit different. It hits different than when you're like 17 years old and it's just the coolest thing in the world.
Well, and I remember too, like, we would always get together in person to play
Mhm.
because there was no online gaming at the
Yeah.
time, right? So, you would miss that in person as well with the snacks, you would just make a whole night out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Jay says, "Real life and jobs are overrated." Nah.
I've found that I enjoy having electricity in my household, so while I do complain about my job, it does have its perks and benefits.
As this is true. So you also have an educational background on petroleum engineering. Is that
That is
right?
correct, yes.
How did this help you with your world building at all, if it
I
did?
think it allowed me to problem solve the
Mm.
fake problems that I came up with. Um, and so when you're, in a science or math related field of study, you're given complex problems, maybe not all of the information, and part of their teaching is go out into the world and find the missing information so that
Mm,
you can complete this complex problem. Um, and in the first chapter of the book, you learn about xantium, which
mm,
is the made up metal that I introduced to this world to be my magic system. And when you introduce something that's made up, you introduce a world of possibilities and you introduce a world of consequences. And
mm,
so, with every possibility needed an equal opposite consequence, and so I needed to learn how to solve those consequences with my real life in book technology. And so I think that that experience of solving complex problems with incomplete information made for better world building experience.
interesting. It's, I love how you explained it. It allowed you to solve problems in your made up in your made up world, made up problems. It's it's a skill, honestly, because you spend it like authors spend time creating these things, but then you have to
Mhm,
fill in the plot holes, you have to figure out all these things. You have to do it all on your own and then get feedback where you can.
mhm.
And, in terms of, like, alpha and beta reads, is that a stage you went through as well?
Yeah, in the scientific process, you have hypothesis, and then the next part is experimentation, where
Mm,
you actually try and get real world results to support your hypothesis so that you can come up with a conclusion.
right.
Writing is very similar. My hypothesis is this book is good. I got to give it to
Mm.
people. And I gave Lost Souls to, I think, 3 people. Um, one of them is now a writing friend of mine. I read his recent debut, and I hope to read his next one. Um, the second person that read it, I found on Reddit,
Mm.
and they were someone who just graduated editorial school or whatever formal training that they had just gone through, and were looking to do 1 or 2 free developmental edits, which
Oh,
is
wow.
like a professional beta reader. And this person shattered my reality, if that's the
Oh.
easiest way to say that. They gave me a 15-page editorial document outlining everything that was good and bad about the story,
Mm.
and because I was a brand new writer, there was a lot that needed to be fixed.
Right.
However, getting that was the most invaluable thing that I could have for the story because it invalidated my hypothesis that I had a good book, and it let me start over and say,
Right.
"Ah, here are all the things that I need to change to make it a good book."
Mhm.
Um, and then I got my original beta reader to read it once more, and he said, "This is night and day difference. It's so much better. You really need to improve your dialogue." I'm horrible at dialogue. It's still something
Okay.
I'm bad at. I'm really good at description. That's, I think, my
Mm.
thing. Um, and he's like, "If you tighten up the dialogue, it'll be ready for publication." And then I got a hybrid edit where the editor that I hired, they did both a developmental and line edit at the same time,
Oh, wow.
where they checked to make sure the sentences were all clear. But if they found a plot hole, they told me about it and they let me
Right.
fix it and they worked with me. And so they gave the story a little bit more attention than me just saying, "Hi, I have a book. Please edit it and hand it back to me." And so it
Right.
was a really great working process, and that was spectacular to have.
That's amazing. It just goes to show that, as much as you were talking about earlier, writing is it can be very solitary.
Mhm.
It is so invaluable to have a good team behind you to help you as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in terms of that process, would you do that process again for the next book? Would you do something different?
I think I'm gonna do it more rigorously.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
I was brand new to writing. I was coming at it from, not knowing anybody in the community, in the world. What I was doing, everything I learned was from YouTube. And so I
Right.
didn't have beta readers, and so I took anyone that I could get, and I got, like, 5 or 6 people who said, "Yeah, I'd love to do it." And then they stopped after, like, the first scene.
Oh,
And so now I have more people in my team, more people in the community, more people willing to help, people in the Page Turners Discord. I'll
yes.
post in and say, "Hey, I have a paragraph. It's not working. I'm trying to get this, this, and this across. Can you help me?" And they're
Mm.
lovely. So I will hopefully have more eyes on it, which I'm very excited for.
That's amazing. It's incredible to hear authors' journeys, where you started, where you came from, how you took these ideas and put them into practical use, and everything that you've learned along the way. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Absolutely. It was a wonderful, I think, almost 2 years for the first one. And then the second one, I started drafting last August. So
Okay.
we're at a much faster pace. So everyone who wants book 2, it's on its way.
Oh, good.
Um, but another part of the team that is just as um, what's what I'm looking for? Necessary. And the first part of the process for the reader side is the cover artist.
Oh, yes, I did
Um,
wanna ask about that. So
and
let's dig
so,
in.
yeah, I had no idea about covers. And so I
Mm.
went to a bookstore and I just looked around. I was like, okay, these sci fi covers, they all have similar elements, but they're not the style that I want. It was typically singular character or abstract art. And I wanted to tell a story with my cover because everyone
Mm.
says the cover is what sells the book. And I found an artist on Twitter who I adore. He has a brutalist, dark aesthetic where he uses like a brush on digital paint, and he's phenomenal. Um, However, he was not the person who did the cover. He had a 3-year wait list. And so
Oh my gosh.
I went to his follows and I was like, "You probably follow some other artists." And I
Yeah.
found the gentleman who did this cover. His name is Christopher Cant. I believe
Okay.
it's Chris Cant Art on Twitter. And he does fantasy with this brushstroke style that you see on here. And I said, "Hey, you do a lot of like big burly metal fantasy army men. Could you do big burly army sci-fi fantasy men?" And he was like, "I absolutely can." And so we started that process, and like the Word doc that I gave you today, where I was like, here's everything that I'm just going to word vomit out of my brain and I hope is helpful. I made him a 6-page Google Doc
Oh my
and I
gosh.
outlined all of the characters. I gave them their backstories. I gave them what they
Wow.
looked like, the in world description. And then I went to Microsoft Word because that's my premier art studio program. And I pulled clip art and I took pictures from the internet and I screen grabbed and I cropped and like, it's like, this is what I want it to look like. Can you make this? And he's like, yeah, I'll come up with something. I'll let you know. And 4 to 6 weeks later, he has the cover like 95% what it is right now.
Oh,
The
wow.
only change that I think we made was he like proposed 2 options. So it wasn't even a change. The gold, I guess, aura around the characters,
Right.
he offered green as well, and I was like, "No, green's dumb. I'm a personal hater of green. That's just a personal quirk of mine." And I was like, "Gold it is," and I
Right.
love it so much. Um,
That's
and
beautiful.
so the cover tells a story. You have your 2 characters, they're in conflict. You have two titans, they're in conflict. You have the ring as their
Mm.
background. Above the word lost is the nucleus, which is a pivotal component of world building. And then you have the city that they're in below. And then there's a piece of world building in the city. And then on the back are the Leviathan. Um, and so it's the threat not seen. And so I loved being able to tell a story with the image.
And it just between the design that you had organized and the artwork that the artist pulled off, you guys did a beautiful job at this. Because the more I look at it, the more I notice, and that was the first thing that caught my attention. I was like, oh wait, no, there's more here.
Mhm. And I think there's actually, oh, where is it? So this was a mistake on my part on blocking the design. In the very first paragraph of the blurb on the right side, there's a ring behind the word because there's more than one ring in this world. And so, off far into the distance of the image, there's another ring.
Excuse
So,
me.
second line on the right side behind the word control, there's a little blue hint.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so there's another ring in this world. There's five that you learn about, but the story's only on one in one city, so it's not
Right.
relevant to the story. But there is a vast world out there that they don't get to explore at all.
Well, there's your universe and your
Hmm.
Cosmere. That's
Hmm.
fantastic. I never would have found that if you didn't point that out to me.
Yeah, there's a
That's
there's a lot in
amazing.
there.
That's amazing. So, and in terms of the ring, why go with a ring world for humanity's future?
Blatant plagiarism. Um,
There we go.
Halo was another game that I grew up with in high school, and I absolutely just loved the world of it. Big space elements, and the rings were just such a unique setting that I hadn't seen anywhere else. Um, and just the rule of cool dominated in this one. However, I wanted to do it a little bit differently. I wanted to do it my way. In Halo, there is environment, there's nature, there's water, there's mountains. Like it's like Earth, but on a ring. These rings are completely metal. There is no environment, there is no grass, there's no flora, fauna, there are no animals, because the sole purpose of the ring is to shepherd humanity into the future. And
Mm.
so anything else would be a waste of resources.
I do love that. I noticed that, and I don't think it's a spoiler if I share it. It's more just a reaction
Mhm,
to you do see characters react to greenery in a
mhm,
very what's the word I'm looking for? They were very it was almost like an assault of the senses for
mhm,
them. The green, they're not used to seeing green, and that in that moment I was like, "Oh, we're in a different kind of world."
mhm.
It's
I I
fantastic.
don't know if I kept it in the book because I took a lot of,
Okay.
me telling the reader about the world, not from the character's point of view. They're like, um, they said, "You're getting out of the character's head, you're head hopping, so you need to delete this."
Mm,
But fire is something that I absolutely adore. I love sitting around by a bonfire, and
mm,
when they see green for the first time, it's associated with the burning of dead wood, and so
mm.
the concept of, keeping the tree in line is a metaphor for keeping humanity in their own lane, and so they
Oh.
cull the branches that extend too far out, and they burn it,
Mm.
and that's a
Oh,
metaphor for how
okay.
they treat the people.
Yeah, I that's, quite a bit of detail you put in there. I love it, I love it. So, I'm just gonna put it to the chat because we'll wrap up soon here, but, if you have a question for Ryan, pop them in the chat and we will, cover those as well. While we're waiting for those questions to come through, I do wanna ask ask because this is something that's I imagine would, always come up or you would think of after an interview. You've done a few interviews so far.
Mhm.
Has there ever been a topic that just hasn't come up, something you've been dying to talk about and you just haven't had the chance to yet?
It So I have a silly answer for this one, and I
Please.
love the question. It's such a great question. It's like, "Hey, what's the thing you wanna talk about?"
Mhm.
Mine is Formula 1.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, and so I'm brand new to the sport. Like, I've only been a fan for 1 proper full season. I got to go to my first race last October.
Oh, wow.
Um, it is so much fun, and the first race is in approximately 16 hours. It's, like, at noon tomorrow.
You got your timer set.
Yeah, I have it. So we're gonna see if this works. Okay, I hope this works. Can you see all the brown that's not green?
Yes.
Those are all the calendar items for the races. So I downloaded the full race calendar, practice, qualification, and the race into my calendar because it is such a wonderful sport, and my favorite thing about it is it's in the morning. I wake up and it's at
Oh,
8 a.m.
that's
because they all
nice.
happen in Europe or Northern Africa or some part of the Middle East or Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Japan's the worst. It starts at 2 a.m. Um,
Oh my
I
gosh.
skip that one and watch it in the morning.
That's fair.
Uh-huh. But it's 7, 8, 9 a.m. on a Sunday, so I wake up, I have my coffee. Um, this is tea, but this is the type of mug that I have on a weekend for a coffee. So I'll have my
Right.
half pot, full pot of coffee. My wife likes to sleep in. My
Right.
pup sits at my feet at the edge of the couch, and we just watch the race for 2 hours. It's such a wonderful way to start the day.
I love that. I love that. I love that you start your day off with something you love, but also you can just kick back, relax,
Mhm.
enjoy the time. And, we actually have a follow-up question here from NJ. As a sports person, do you put sports in your books? Maybe a made-up sport for your world?
So there's a flashback of a Zephyr, which is the flying fish motorcycle Grand Prix, because I love MotoGP, which is motorcycle racing,
Very nice.
where 10-year-old Maximus is in the really fancy box seats, and he couldn't give two rats' asses about the race. He's there for the snacks. And so he's running through all the adults going to get the snacks, and he hears something he's not supposed to hear. And so I give you world building through the experience of a 10-year-old, and he's forgotten it completely, but you as the reader now know what happened to him.
I love that. I relate to Max so much.
Mhm. Um, and it's another way to do world building. How
Mm,
do the elites that he overhears talk about the low class?
right.
It's a single sentence, and it's really not that important. However, you're at the perfect time to learn about this and just call to note that this upper class stuffy guy grabs his shirt and says, "There's not enough oxygen. You need to
Mm,
take it from them and redistribute to us."
I did read
And
that part.
you'll learn the consequence of how do you do oxygen in a ring world? How do you
Mm,
do the science of keeping an atmosphere in a ring world? Um, Not a spoiler to say that line is kind of important,
okay.
and it was one of my favorite things about writing this was the foreshadowing elements. This
Right.
one off, two off, talking about a tree, talking about a fire pit, talking about
Mhm.
oxygen, all these things that you would take for granted. You read through and you're like, this world is different than ours. And on the reread, you're like, now I know the importance of what they just said.
Yeah. I love those kind of reads where you go back, you can get all the nuance and details.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, I'm simultaneously watching The Expanse
Oh,
at
a
the
good one.
moment,
Yeah.
and I read the first book, and I
Mhm.
I didn't continue. I read it at a bad time, I think. I read it during COVID. So if anyone
Okay.
has read that, and they might understand why it was a bad time.
Mhm.
But, I love seeing some of the parallels as well with that type of dystopian future where in The Expanse, there's a withholding of water,
Mhm.
right? In the belt, and so seeing that a similarity with the oxygen, I was like, "Ah, it's gonna get bad before it gets
Yes.
better."
Humans have a wonderful built-in instinct to fight for survival.
Mhm.
And so that instinct is conscripted
Mhm.
later. So
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And, sorry, that just reminded me of something too. Are you a Star Trek fan at all?
So I was not raised with Star Trek.
Yeah,
I
no worries.
watched some of the movies that came out into the 2000s and 2010s and really enjoyed them, but I haven't watched any of the television series.
Okay, so and this isn't a spoiler, but it's just a line that I love and reminds me of this as well, your book, in the sense of I believe it's Quark
Mhm,
in Deep Space Nine, where he says humans can be very pleasant creatures when they are fed and their needs are looked after, but they become animals the moment they have to survive. And I'm paraphrasing that, but it's the same
mhm,
kind of concept. You because these aliens have lived with humans who have been in a utopia, and they're
mhm.
now with these humans who have had to struggle and survive for even the meagerest of means of living, and, the shock that they go through in that comparison from this alien perspective is really fascinating.
Yeah, that's lovely. I've always thought very highly of Star Trek just
Mm,
because of how people speak about it, and from the little
yeah.
bit that I've been, exposed to, it seems like their writers were just extremely talented.
Yeah, I was introduced to Star Trek, the TV shows as an adult in my 20s,
Mhm,
and I'm still so impressed. I'm still going through all the different shows that they have, but it's so impressive how they navigate, politics, human ethics, all of those things. So definitely I would recommend. I think you would, get quite a lot out of it if ever you're interested in picking it up.
absolutely.
And, we'll take this last question here from Derek. Do you have any goals that are more related to how you engage with the book community at large?
I was thinking about this a little bit earlier today because right now there is a discussion going on about my favorite anime, which is One Piece.
Oh,
Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, Murphy Napier, Philip Chase, and Alan from the Library of Alexandria are
yes.
all doing a live stream discussion of One Piece as they read the manga. And it's just my favorite thing on television right now. It is so good. Alan, who I discovered from this panel, is probably my new favorite person on the internet. He
He's
is
amazing.
amazing. And I've watched Murphy for probably the longest of anyone on BookTube, and then Mike, and then as after I published and got into indie BookTube, Philip has been at the forefront because of the Adan trilogy, and he's lovely as well. I love
Absolutely.
him specifically, and I hope he's watching or watches this in the future. He was the host of the talk yesterday, and he
Oh,
pulled up
okay.
all of my jokes that I made in the comments and made me feel really good.
It's
So
amazing.
thank you, Philip. And so I would like to do some of those. Like if there is ever a panel that someone wants
Right.
to pull up and say, hey, we're talking about XYZ piece of media, or we're doing indie author panels. I
Yeah.
love these live interactions where you just get to talk with your friends.
Yeah.
I'm not so big on produced content. I probably won't make reels or TikToks. Yours are hilarious, by the way. I
Oh,
love them.
I'm still
The
experimenting.
book that was borrowed gave me just
Ah.
tingles.
I've
Um,
had that happen.
um, yeah, so I don't really wanna do recorded YouTube videos. I hate
Yeah.
editing. That's video
It's a
editing is
lot.
worse. It's the
I
worst.
completely understand. If I didn't have to edit, I
Mhm.
wouldn't.
So as we finish up here, it's a
Yeah.
lovely segue. I'm gonna go hop over to Matt, Beard of Darkness's channel. He's hosting Two to
Yeah.
Ramble.
Also
And
fantastic.
they're my newest favorite podcast. And Richard's got the life. He paid for the
Mhm.
equipment, and Austin does all the work. I want that in my life. So if anyone needs podcasting equipment and wants to start a booktube thing and is willing to do all the video editing, we'll get you a webcam and a mic. That would be my ideal setup. Anything where I am a guest and I just get to talk.
That's amazing. I love it 'cause I relate. 'Cause it will in terms of, like, my own perspective as a reader, it takes away
Mhm.
so much time. from
Mhm,
reading and reviewing, and while I've been trying to keep it fun by learning new stuff about editing,
mhm.
it takes so long to learn how to freaking edit.
It's like hosting a party. You have a
Oh
great
gosh.
time hanging out with all your friends, and then you
Yes.
have to do the dishes when they leave.
Oh, no.
That's why you go to their house.
Brilliant. You just unlocked unlocked the secret to videos. I love it. Thank you so much, Derek, and thank you as well, Ryan, for the comments on the shorts. I'm still figuring them out, so I'm glad they're coming across so well. And,
They're a blast.
oh, I try and take my personal experiences, like the borrowed book, which
Mhm.
you saw is quite damaged.
They're the most
It's
relatable, they're wonderful.
yeah, I wanted to see if I could turn it into something funny. Now, I will say normally I put a disclaimer saying no book was harmed.
Mhm,
That one obviously was harmed, but that one belongs to my toddler son.
mhm,
It's his
mhm.
forever. He loves that book. He carries it around everywhere, so that is his.
It's his stuffed animal.
Basically.
I just came up with the idea, you can take it or run with it or leave it.
By
When you
means.
open the fridge and there's nothing to eat, but it's all books and you don't know what to read.
Oh, no. That's good, I like that. That's how I feel looking at the shelves.
Exactly, there's nothing to read here.
Yeah, there's oh, great, go to the pantry, nothing there either.
It's Malazan.
Oh, no. It's not what I ordered.
You order a Cosmere book and, out comes the Stormlight Archive, and you're like, "I got extra!"
Oh, that's fantastic. And, Derek, are you a booktuber too, NJ? So, NJ, you got a question there as well. But I just wanna say thank you so much, Ryan, for your time, answering all the questions, the interrogation, as you will, or if you will. And, to everyone who joined us, asked your questions as well, thank you so much for being here, being part of the conversation. If you are looking for a sci-fi book to read, Lost Souls. Go check it out. The links will be in the description below. As always, thank you so much again, Ryan.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Everyone who caught the live stream, thanks for hanging out. Everyone in the video, catching it after, thank you for watching all the way through. We're an hour and a half in. I know that's a long video. Hopefully, your commute is going well. Uh, Drive safe, and we'll catch you next time.
And as always, take care of yourselves.